Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Life of a Dev. And today we're going to be looking at a plugin that I made for the community manager of FearlessPixelmon.com. We're going to be looking at Daily Deal. And so what this plugin is pretty much as it sounds. Just it takes an item and makes it cheaper than it usually is. And so I've gone ahead and generated our project for us, and the artifact ID is just Daily Deal. Group ID is the same as last time. That's pretty much all I've done so far. And I filled in the pom.xml. But now, as I said last time, we're going to be working alongside of another plugin for this one. We're going to be working with Vault. So that means we need to add a couple things to our pom.xml. And we're going to start by adding in another repository. And so, we're just going to find the Vault repository, which I already have it. But you can easily Google it to find it if you need to. And the URL, which I'm just going to copy on over so I don't mess it up. And again, you can just find this online, usually at the GitHub page for these projects. And so that's all you need for a repository. But now you need to add it as a dependency. And it's pretty much going to mirror the dependency we already have for Bukit. So you just go ahead, create the dependency tags, then you add the group ID, the artifact ID, and the version you want, as well as the scope. So I'm just going to go ahead, paste those on in. So there you go. You'll find that if you Google Vault GitHub page, it'll definitely be there. It's a very popular plugin to work with, so it's pretty easy to do. Now, want to hop straight in the main program. So we're going to do create a new package again with the name of Life of a Dev, and then we're going to create the main class. Main. There we go. So we generated our class. We're going to extend the Java plugin once again, and that's going to be the main start to it. Last time we just did a basic plugin, so you didn't need to have any global variables. However, this time we're going to need to set a couple up. So we're going to do the public static, and then we're going to set up the economy. We're going to set it equal to null for now. We're going to have the permission, which is for the perms, and then this is the chat handler, which we're just going to add in the event that we want to later. And we're going to have to import all of these straight from net.milkbowl.vault. So make sure you pick the right one. As you can see, for permission, there was a couple extra ones there. You want to make sure you have the right one. And then, since it has to do with the date, I want to do an instance of calendar. And this is going to allow us to get the date, which we're going to do right now. So, we're going to do the codedate.get. We're going to do calendar.day of week. And what that'll return is either an integer from 1 to 7. So it can be any of those. 7 is Saturday, and number 1 is Sunday. So it just increases from there. So Monday would be day number 2, and so on. And then we want to get the logger, so we can write out the console. And that's done just like that. And that's all we're going to really need for our global variables. And go ahead and just comment those, just so you remember what they're there for, just in case. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the public void on enable. What this is it pretty much, it's a listener that as soon as the plugin is enabled, this is what runs. And so we're going to go ahead and fill this in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see if the economy is set up. If it's not, we're just going to want to shut down this plugin because it cannot run without it. If you do a soft depends, which means that it would like to have it but doesn't necessarily need it, then you can do that as well, but we're going to go ahead and just end it. And I hit the caps lock at some point. You want to make sure that for anything that you log out, you want to make sure that it will be clearly understood what it is. because you may not be the one looking at it, and even though you know, the other people may not know. So you want to make sure that your message is very clear on what's happening. So now all we're going to do, we're going to get the plugin manager, which just handles the loading of all plugins, and we're just going to disable plugin, and then this, then return. So that's just going to pretty much just shut down this plugin, stop it from loading. That's not necessary. I'll set up permissions, and we're going to set up the chat. And then today we're even working with a config file, so we're going to go ahead and initialize that. And as you can see, these are all errors right now because we don't have them set up yet. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. The first one we're going to start with is the economy, and you're going to want it to return a boolean, so then that if statement will trigger. And obviously you want it to return true. That would be the best. So what you're going to do is you're going to test the server, get the server, and again get the plugin manager. You're going to use that quite a bit for this. Then you're going to get the plugin by its name, which it will always load as Vault, no matter what. So you want to check that and see if it's null. Because if it's null, then it doesn't have it, and you return false. However, if it does, you're going to want to continue on. But you don't need to do an if statement because it's not really necessary in this case. Or an else statement. Sorry. And now we're just going to set up the economy itself. So then we can go ahead and use it. And again, you're going to have to import a couple things along the way. You just want to make sure you do that as soon as you can. And you're again going to make sure that that worked, because if it didn't, you're again not going to want the plugin to load because people will be getting items for free all day long. And then you take your economy variable that you set earlier, and you go ahead and set it to the registered service provider, which is the economy, and you want to get the provider. And again, you're going to do another null check. So if that's null, it's going to return false, and your plugin will not load. Now the setting up the chat and the setting up the permissions is kind of a trivial thing. It's not necessary as much for this plugin, so we're just going to kind of pass that for the time being. But it does the same thing. It just gets the registered service provider for the parameter that is given, which is the chat in this case, and then the chat is just the get provider, and you want to make sure that it's not null. That's all you got to do. It's a pretty basic setup for those. Now we're going to fill out or finish the last method from our onEnable, which is the initialize config. This one is pretty important because this whole plugin is run from the config. So to get the items, get the price, and get everything that it needs. And so what you can do is get something called your file configuration, and that's going to be your config. And you can just type in get config, it'll do it all for you. It's all built in, and it's super nice to work with. And so we are going to want this, what I call the stats, and that's just going to be an array. An arrays as list. And we're going to have the display name that you're going to have to be able to set. That'll be what displays to the user. The item name, that'll be the Minecraft item name, and then the price that you want. And so that's all I'm going to work with. You can fill it out with anything you would like to. It's all up to what you want for your version of this plugin. And we'll import that. And import. Maybe. There we go. Yep. And we'll just save that. See what this error is. And then we'll just get rid of that. Maybe why is this being an error? There we go. You can do that. That'll work out just the same. Oh, it's because that's a lesson learned there, guys. So you see how I ended up using the wrong list and it caused an error? That's why you gotta be very careful of choosing the right imports. So now we're just gonna add the config to the default. And since there's 7 days of the week, we're obviously gonna have 7. But to make it a little bit easier for what we were doing, I'm just gonna do it by numbers, because that's how the dates are given to us. And it's going to be a lot easier than just going ahead and changing them to the days, even though you could do that with a simple switch statement. And we'll go over that a little bit later. Don't worry about that. Once we get into a lot more difficult stuff, we'll go ahead and do that. But you're going to do this for all 7 days of the weeks. You can easily just go ahead, copy and paste it. But in programming, you always want to be very cautious of copying and pasting, because sometimes it can go badly. So I want to make sure that you get the right amount, everything like that. Then, what you want to do is copy the defaults. So if there's not a config already, it will set them all to the default. And then save config. And now, because other people may be wanting to use this plugin someday, I'm going to go ahead and comment what days are which for the first one and the last one, just so then they can easily figure it out when they go ahead and use it. And now, we're into the bulk of the program. We're into the on command. So again, we talked about this function last time. You just want to, go ahead and fill it all out exactly the same as last time. And these are all arbitrary variable names. You can go ahead and choose anything you would like. This is just what I like to use. It's what I'm used to. What you want to try to do is get into a standard, so then you'll always do everything the exact same way. And again, I'm just going to make it return true. Okay, so now we're going to test the get label once again. This time, we're still going to ignore case it because I'm still not too worried about it. We're going to do daily deal, and then this little bit right here is called an OR operator. So if either one of these are true, it will execute the true statement of the if statement. And so again, I'm just going to do it, and then I want to make an alias right there. So instead of typing daily deal out, they can just type /dd, and then they'll be able to use everything that they need to. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a string command, and that's going to be arg0. So the format of my commands are usually like this. So you have the main command name, and then you do what's going to happen with it if you have more than one command, and then there's usually the parameters. And this is how I did mine. So I had a set, then I had the date that they were going to use, which would be, again, 1 through 7. Then I had the display name, the item name, and the price. So that's the way I'm going to do it. So the command would be set. So we're going to go ahead and test for that, because that's what we want first. So you can again do this in any order you want. It'll just go through the if statements until it finds it. However, this is just how I do it. And because I don't want anyone getting a hold of this, the sender has to be op for them to be able to set it. Otherwise, if somebody accidentally got the permission to it, they could easily set the item to whatever they want and the price to 0, and then they get a lot of a free item. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check the length of the args, because if it's not 5, they do not have the proper amount, and that may break the plugin. So we're just going to send them a message. We're going to use chatColor.red to make sure that it gets our attention, and we're just going to send them an error message. And again, you want to make sure that these are very clear, so someone who's just finding them for the first time will really understand what happens. Then we're going to return false because it errored out and didn't complete what it needed to. But if it is over 5, then I'm going to assign all my variables to the arguments. So the date is 1, the display name is arg2, and so on with the rest of them. It doesn't matter that your string or your price is a string, because you're able to just post that later as an int from a string. And if you really want a challenge, you can go ahead and create your own parser. What we're doing now is we're going to set the variables into the config. So basically, with it, you get the config from this plugin, then you do .set. And so the first parameter of this is the path that it's going to set. So it's going to take in the date, which would be the 1 through 7. So we'll say it's 1 for an explanation. So it's going to be 1.displayName. So whenever you want to access that, you just do this .getConfig.get 1.displayName, and then you're going to get the variable displayName. It's pretty easy to work with, and it's just really nice to work with. And so you're going to set all of those to the proper variables that you want. And again, you're just going to want to make sure that you double check throughout your work, just to ensure that it will definitely work properly. Because although it's a great learning experience when you mess up, it's also nice not to. What you're going to go ahead and do after you finish setting them all is you want to make sure you save the config. Otherwise, everything you just did is kind of pointless. And then just return true. And so that little block is our set statement. And so now that we're done with that, we're going to move on to the next command. And we have a lot of them, so we're going to do an else if statement instead. So what we're going to do here is we're going to check to see if it equals the help. And this is for people who don't exactly know how the plugin works. And it's just what we did last week, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy it on over, just to make it go a little bit faster. And then you get your header, which I chose to make this kind of a rainbow type of colors. But I made the aqua top, the yellow bottom, the green in the middle, which the dd/ddc, which is our next command we're going to do, and then the by command. And that's pretty much everything that the average user is going to have access to. And so we're just going to go ahead onwards. And like I said, we're going to go into the C command. So again, we don't really care about the caps on any of these, so we're just always going to do an equals ignore case. I just find it a lot easier, and it's a lot easier for players who sometimes don't know what they're doing. And again, we're going to do an args check. So if the args.length does not equal 1, which is just the help, or the C, sorry, I'll put it in here so people can see. So that's how the command should look. I like putting it in here just in case somebody ever wants to come in and look at my code, then they can see exactly what I was thinking when I did it. And again, if they don't have the arguments, you're going to go ahead and send them the same error that we did before. Again, copy and paste, just make sure that you're very careful with it. Else, this is where you're going to access the config. So you can get multiple things from the config, and you can get them in many different ways, but we're going to get a string, which is going to be the display name. Again, we're going to concatenate the date onto the display name, and that's going to give us the display name for the date, the current date that you're currently in. And then we're going to do the same thing with the price, which for the current time we're going to leave as a string for the purpose of displaying to the user. However, later we will post it to an integer, and then we'll be able to take that amount from the player. And now we're just going to send them a message. And again, you can make this message whatever color you want, or whatever you really want it to say. However, I went ahead and did a variety of colors in there. And you just, if you want multiple colors, you can do that. You just have to use the plus sign, which is concatenation for strings, and just put them all together. And then you can put whatever you message in there that you'd like. You can make it a custom message based on the user. But again, I'm just going for a simple plugin to just allow my users on the server to have a unique time, have access to unique plugins. And then you're just going to return true, because that's all we're doing. And so, we're again going to do another if statement, an else if statement. Now, we're getting into the buy command. Now this is where you really access the actual Vault plugin itself. But again, you're going to check the args, and this time we're going to want to check for 2. And that's because they're going to do buy, and then they're going to do, do /dd, do buy, which is going to be the first arg, and then they're going to do amount. And the amount can be any as long as they have the money for it, which we definitely will test for. And so, now, what you're going to do is you're going to actually get the amount before you go ahead and really do anything. So, if you do integer.valueof, this will allow you to pass in a string and it will parse it for you out to an int through a library. And this will be really useful along the way of config files, because usually everything is stored as a string, so it's really nice to be able to just pull it out and transform it yourself, or cast it is the proper term, I should say. And then you're going to get the actual player by using the sender, and that's important because that is how you actually get the balance of the player. So I'm going to make a variable called bal, which is going to be the balance. Then you're going to get the player, and you can put him in there, so then you can actually get his balance. And then you are going to get the integer price, and do int price will equal integer, the value of, oh, already got it there. And then what you can do is you can go ahead and just put straight in there this.getConfig.getString date plus the price. And then you end up with the integer for the price, which will allow you to test the player's balance. So you're going to calculate how much it's going to cost. So you take the item times the price, and then you're going to go ahead and make sure that the balance of the player is greater than the amount times the price. And then, oh, sorry, I had that backwards. You want to check that the balance is less than, and then this will allow you to be able to send an error message to them saying that they do not have enough funds. And I just say you do not have the necessary funds to do this. Again, if it's a bunch of funds you're playing with, you can make it mean, you can make it whatever you want to. And then we're going to go into the else statement. And this else statement is pretty much if they have the proper amount of money. And so, you're going to withdraw from the player the amount, so you're going to put the player in there. And then the second argument is the amount, which again is going to be the amount times the price. So I want to make sure that you're doing that properly, and then they're not getting too many items for too cheap. And then you get the config again, and then you're going to get the actual item name this time. And this is necessary for how I give the items through the give command through console. You don't want the item name, and you want to make sure that it's the proper item name. If you're using a mod or anything, like we are, you're going to want to put something along the lines in there of that actual mod item name. So for example, the Pixelmon would be Pixelmon item gold hammer or something along those lines. So you just want to make sure that you have the proper name so that it won't error out and take the money. And of course, you could do a check to make sure that they get the item before you take the money, but sometimes that fails as well. So It's best just to do it this way, and then you can fix it later if need be. Oh. You create a new item stack using that material, which you get using the item name. So again, you just want to make sure that it's a proper item name, and then you put in the proper amount. And then you want to make sure that people do not have a full inventory when they do this. So then you get the player's inventory, and then you go ahead and add the item to it. And then you can log the info, like I'm going to. Do p.get display name bot. And then this is just going to pretty much be just a basic thing for logging purposes, that you'll be able to see how much they bought, just to make sure that it's giving out the right amount, and everything else, and just generally testing. And of course, if you change it, use the set command and change the config at any point in time, you're going to want to be able to reload it. And so the plugins have a really nice built-in reload function. So you just do command = ignore case for reload, and then you just do reload config. And that is the plugin done. And I'll be putting all this into a GitHub page, so you'll be able to see all the code anytime that you want to. But we'll just go through it real quick. So you got your on enable, so that's what happens when the plugin actually gets enabled by the server. The setup economy, setup chat, and setup permissions. It just makes sure that if you want to access any of those, you'll be able to. So I'll be able to use the permissions, or I'll be able to do something in the chat as long as I want to, as well as use the economy, which we do in our on command. The initialize config, this will set up the default config for the first time, but if there's already a config already loaded, it will ignore all this and will keep what you already have. So if you just want to reset the config, just delete it, reload the plugin, you'll be good to go. And then the on command. You checked for the main command, you did the set, you did the help, the C, the buy, and the reload. And so that's pretty much all we have to do for this plugin. It's a pretty basic plugin, but it hits on a few key points of working with config files and also working with other plugins. And now we have to do one last final touch to it, and that will be the plugin.yml, which this one's going to be a little bit bigger than the last one due to having a couple more commands. So the name again is Daily Deal, and then you do the main, which you want to make sure that you get 100% correct. And our version is going to be for 1.7.10. Again, I'm the author. And here's the main difference from last time, is you can do depend. And this means that the plugin will depend on Vault to be loaded, otherwise it will not load. And that's very important to put in there. So again, our command is just daily deal, which is just the base command to use daily deal. And then the usage, again, I'm not really worried about it. I put how it's used in there, in the code itself, and I'm going to go over it when I go into Minecraft later. Again, this is just to set up an alias, so it knows that it's looking for that command and that that's a proper command. And then the permissions. So I'm going to do the daily deal.set. Again, I like to use the plugin name followed by the plugin command as my naming convention. You can use whatever you want. And the default is false with that one. Now, the daily deal.help, however, we don't really mind who gets that command. So, I'll set the description to be the help command, and the default will be true. And I'm going to go back and proper that default right there. And I'm just going to go ahead, copy that, give you a nice example of copy and paste that you can do here. And then after help, we have the C, which is for everyone, which is the C command. The buy, so this one is definitely true, so they can definitely buy the items. You want everyone to be able to access that, because honestly, it's a great thing for a server like this. And then, we don't really want everyone to have the reload, so we're just going to put that as false. And again, that's all we had to do today, so we're just going to install it, and make sure everything runs properly. Of course it failed on me, but you just click install again. That happens sometimes. And then, you get the build success. And it'll appear in your target folder. So that's all we have today on the coding side of things. But now we're going to hop onto Minecraft so that I can show you how it works in action. I'll see you there. Good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to Minecraft. Today we're just going to hop straight in and go over the daily deal that we just learned. I'm going to start off with daily deal / help to see what we can do. So we're going to see what's on sale today. Apparently grass is on sale today for $4, so we're going to buy some of that, just because we want it. You see, we got some more grass in our inventory. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do this set. So today is day number 3, and we're going to just pick a random item. So we're going to put an iron helmet. And that is going to be iron helmet, and we're going to sell it for 500. And you go back to /GDC, you'll see that it worked. You buy 6, you end up with 6 iron helmets. And that is how daily deal works. There's not really a lot to it, but it's still a pretty dynamic plugin. So, I hope we all learned something today, and have a good night.